keep putting them in the chat and we will get to them when Jamie's done with her talk.
Yeah. Okay, I have a cough, so there'll be lots of coughing. So I'm Jamie Bachmann. I am a wildlife. Can everybody hear me? I have this mic on, so it's like a whole new situation for me.
We can hear you just fine.
Thanks. Wildlife educator. I'm a wildlife educator in a partnership position with Northern Prairies Land Trust and Nebraska Game and Parks. And what I like to say about what my job is that I teach pre-K through adult about wild Nebraska. So I know a little bit about a lot of stuff, and I facilitate learning through a multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary approach, which is the backbone of environmental education. And what that means to me is instead of compartmentalizing the core subject areas in one lesson or program or outdoor experience with me, we'll cover math, science, geography, and literature all in one potentially. And so I'm really trying to make those connections with the core subject areas, for that deeper learning and understanding. And so using environmental education in my programs or lessons or outdoor experiences, they are hands-on and place-based. So although the destruction of the rainforest is important and we need to know, and learning about elephants and lemurs is really cool and fascinating, my passion is to facilitate learning about wildlife and ecology, the wildlife and ecology of Nebraska, about what is right out our back door. And so this instills a sense of place for learners and grows the roots and the connection of, to our home, to where we live in Nebraska. Okay, let me figure out how to switch the screen. The next slide. How do I do this? Uno momento. Just click it. Okay. Oh.
You should. Are you in? Yeah, there you go.
Hold on one second. My notes went away. I'm gonna. Oh, here it is. Okay, I found it. It's good. No one worry. Okay, so first things first. Or did I miss? I missed something. I see. Hold on.
Yeah, I was gonna say we see all your notes if you're okay with that.
Oh, you see all the notes.
I do. Yeah.
Okay. Did you before? Did you before when I was talking?
I did not.
Okay. Well, all right, fine. So,
your screen. Sorry, your screen is just really small. That's the only thing.
Yeah, let's figure this out. No problem.
I just want to make sure that people can see it.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Let's see. We are going to go back to here,
and then can you just hit present mode, right?
There, can you see my notes?
Nope, not now.
Okay, because I need the notes because I'll go off on tangents and no one needs that. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I described, who I am, what my job is. And so let me tell you what I'm going to talk about here. So my scheme here is to just take you on a little journey, maybe philosophize a little bit on what environmental education is, how it's defined and how that definition kind of is evolving or has evolved in the context of ecological outcomes, and how the heart of environmental education drives those ecological outcomes. So let's all get on the same page. First things first, what is environmental education? So environmental and I might refer to environmental education as EE, just so I don't have to say it all the time, because that will just project my talking even faster and people might not be able to hear what I'm saying. So EE, first and foremost, is a conservation strategy. Okay. And there are lots of definitions, but the core definition of what EE is that it's a learning process that increases people's knowledge and awareness about the environment and associated challenges. It develops necessary skills and expertise to address the challenges and fosters attitudes, motivations, and commitments to make informed decisions and take responsible action. So those three things. And I think Amber also referenced this review of this systematic review of the journal that the review of this journal article. And so so the review of the definition of this new understanding, this emerging understanding of what environmental education is that it's moving away from this linear path of, you know, environmental attitudes to knowledge to action, those three, and is now emphasizing, you know, this dynamic, complex ecosystem of relationships. So it's not, so it's not, they don't know, they need to know the information, and then they'll change their behavior. What what this new definition is kind of proposing and is that knowledge alone does not create behavioral change, which then, you know, results in ecological outcomes on the ground. Environmental education instead makes its home in behavioral complexity. So also environmental education is rooted in our cultural ways of life and how this affects how we understand and what we understand about ecological communities and our ecological issues in our community. Oops. So, all right, I said that one, moving on. So what I've been finding in nerding out and going down the wormholes of environmental education effects on conservation and ecological outcomes is that behavioral action, which is the root of those ecological outcomes, that the on the ground conservation that we want to see. Behavioral action is rooted in empathy and connection. So in human relationships, empathy increases with connection. And so the idea is that this would extend to human nature ecological relationships. So maybe I can, you know, suggest maybe perhaps that environmental education in context of ecological outcomes is really a study of human behavior, you know, from the individual to communities and other social groups to policy and decision makers. Next. So I want to just kind of what I was trying to do was to intertwine, you know, some background information about environmental education, but as an educator, but I also wanted to have like boots on the ground, the conservation biologist perspective. And so I had I have just one sample, and I had a great conversation with the most wonderful human, Kyle Schumacher. He is one of our coordinating wildlife biologists with Northern Prairies Land Trust. And I think, you know, the anecdotes that he shared with me, you know, I've heard before. And so he's going to be like our poster child for this presentation. Sorry, Kyle. Hope that isn't horrifying you. I posed to Kyle. So if we want to see conservation happen on the land, we want to see ecological outcomes, we need to influence behavioral change. And to do that, you know, using environmental education as our tool, as our conservation strategy, we're going to use empathy and connection to do that, because that's the root of behavioral change. Then how do we, you know, interpersonally and connecting with the land, you know, so interpersonal connections and connections to the land. And my question that I posed to Kyle was, how do we do that in Nebraska, a state that has, you know, limited public access for generating connection to the land? And Kyle says, this was so good, and we have a unique opportunity here in Nebraska. Instead of big events celebrating public land, interactions are more personal and more intimate. There are more one-on-one opportunities to develop relationships with those that own the land and have their own unique connection to that land. It is humbling in Nebraska that we rely on our citizens in our state to accomplish conservation. And I really love that. And it is humbling. And it creates, and he nailed it, that it creates an opportunity for connection, you know, and environmental education. And that's what I like. That's what my strength is in environmental education. So let's see, what else did I have here? I want to say. So So, and I'm sure perhaps maybe this sentiment is tossed around with biologists a lot. I had never heard it, said in that manner, but because of this unique opportunity, this happens through connection, and the driver is connection to the land and those interrelationships. Next. So kind of going swinging back again, from the boots on the ground to what environmental education is rooted in. Checking the time. So as environmental educators, or those using environmental education as a conservation strategy, knowledge is only a component of that behavioral change, because knowledge and attitudes are not wholly predictive of the changes that we want to see on the ground and the conservation changes. So as you can imagine, due to the complexity of human behavior, the human behavior nerds have not landed on, one model that drives, human motivations and behaviors. But the consensus is that environmental behaviors or action is rooted in emotions, attitudes, beliefs, identities, knowledge, worldviews, and values. Perhaps like all behavior, all behaviors are probably rooted in that. But moving along. Another, as using Kyle as our poster biologist here. He was relaying this story, and he was using the phrase shared windshield time. And I grew up in conservation, doing as a field a summer technician, and I grew up with the Clayton Stalling and Scott Wessel and Tom Wellstead, and they had these stories, this shared windshield time and this connection, they're this connection with land and the connection with people. And so I've heard this phrase maybe tossed around from some of my most favorite biologists. And this shared windshield time is where the interpersonal connection is happening, connecting with landowners who are sharing their connection to the land. And during that shared windshield time, Kyle, being the biologist and the educator here, he was relaying to me about how he was pressing hold on his landscape view, how he presses hold on his landscape view and his knowledge, and learns about the land from the landowners who are connected to it with their own personal knowledge and attitudes and beliefs and worldviews, their values, right? So when that interpersonal connection happens, with the shared windshield time, right? Then the knowledge component of behavioral change for ecological outcomes begin to interlink, right? So, that evolution or process from game species to wildlife ecological perspective of looking at, a landowner looking at their land, Kyle's was really excited. Like it's like super cool to see. He reports, and I know that other biologists have this happen to them too. Text messages, all the interweb connect, all the interweb contacts about what kind of flower is this? My wife loves these flowers. I picked her a bouquet. What kind of bird is this? And so that hunt for knowledge begins with connection, and then those two components. That's why those two components are a powerhouse for behavioral change, and then those ecological outcomes. And I couldn't figure out how to like pop this story in like just naturally. So I just thought I'd make it awkward and just say that I didn't know how to do it. Just, another little Kyle, sorry, Kyle, another little anecdote about, the connections and help to create that component, help connect that component of knowledge. And then that moves into behavioral change and ecological outcomes is he's getting all these questions about birds and flowers, and they're relaying their they don't maybe there isn't necessarily the ecological understanding about an upland sandpiper but they have a relationship with that upland sandpiper, right? They know, landowners they see it and they know, they may not even know anything about it, but they know ecologically, but they know they have a relationship with that bird. And so in June, Kyle found some wildlife grant funding and purchased field guides for landowners. So 20 Sibley's and 35 Nebraska Wildflowers of Nebraska books. And so, he reports back, he sees those books on the dashboards of trucks when he's out doing site visits with landowners. And he hears stories about, this, that bird book he gave me is in the hunting cabin. And he sees kids of the landowners when they come with their dads to their parents to site visits with the biologists. The kids are thumbing through those field guides, right? And so so that connecting, that interpersonal relation and that connecting with the land, it creates this domino effect. Environmental education is a conservation strategy connecting empathy and connection, to produce behavioral change and ecological outcomes. There's a domino effect. And so that thirst for knowledge is what, is brought on by that connection, by that interpersonal and I stumbled over my words there. That thirst for knowledge is like an outcome of that connection, that interpersonal connection and that connection to the land, which essentially is conservation. So next one. So, and if I don't have time to get to the jam board, that's okay. But I want to read this little ditty here that Rachel Carson wrote in a book called A Sense of Wonder. And I read this to a lot of people, and I want to thank Janine Lackey for bringing it to me many years ago, and it has stuck with me always. And so it refers to early childhood as the avenue for creating emotional connection to nature. But I know that I've seen this in lots of grownups, that inner child that's there in us waiting, and our connection to nature is what draws that out and what changes us, what changes our behaviors. And as I read this, I kind of want you to think about not how Rachel writes it about for the child, but also you can you can insert adult in there as well. So just a moment, let me find it and clear my throat. A child's world is fresh and new and beautiful, full of wonder and excitement. It is our misfortune that for most of us, that clear-eyed vision, that true instinct for what is beautiful and awe-inspiring, is dimmed or even lost before we reach adulthood. If I had the influence with the good fairy who is supposed to preside over the christening of all children, I should ask that her gift to each child in the world be a sense of wonder so indestructible that it would last throughout life, as an unfailing antidote against the boredom and disenchantment of later years, the sterile preoccupation with things that are artificial, the alienation from the sources of our strength. If a child is to keep alive his inborn sense of wonder without any such gift from the fairies, he needs the companionship of at least one adult who can share it, rediscovering with him the joy, excitement, and mystery of the world we live in. Parents often have a sense of inadequacy when confronted on the one hand with the eager, sensitive mind of a child, and on the other with a world of complex physical nature inhabited by life so various and unfamiliar that it seems hopeless to reduce it to order and knowledge. In a mood of self-defeat, they exclaim, "How can I possibly teach my child about nature? Why I don't even know one bird from the other?" I sincerely believe for that child and for the parent seeking to guide him, it is not half so important to know as to feel. If facts are the seeds that later produce knowledge and wisdom, then the emotions and the impressions of the senses are the fertile soil in which the seeds must grow. The years of early childhood are the time to prepare the soil. Once the emotions have been aroused, a sense of the beautiful, the excitement of the new and the unknown, a feeling of sympathy, pity, admiration, or love, then we wish for the knowledge about the object of our emotional response. Once found, it has lasting meaning. It is more important to pave the way for a child to want to know, than to put him on a diet of facts he is not ready to assimilate. And I really feel that you could just remove child and put, I mean, it's never too late, right? I really think that we could, that, you know, we can create connections as adults, and we can make these behavioral changes, and we can do those things. We can do those things. And so I think I'll end it there. I'm right at my 20 minutes. And answer any questions, or just, I have some discussion questions, I guess, but